chosen one. Listen closely. You are here not by coincidence. Heaven orchestrated this exact moment because you chose obedience when others chose convenience. That obedience separated you. It marked you. It set you apart like a flame that refuses to go out, even in the fiercest storm. Think back. How many times were you tempted to compromise? How many moments did you feel the pull to follow the crowd? To silence your convictions? To settle for less than holiness? Yet you stood firm. You whispered a quiet but costly yes to God when others turned their backs. That single word of surrender may have cost you relationships, opportunities, or even reputation. But what it gained you is priceless. It gained you the favor of heaven. Your obedience did not go unnoticed. The courts of heaven recorded every moment you bowed to His will, while others laughed at you, while some mocked your faithfulness, while many ignored the whisper of the Spirit. You stood unshaken, and now the Lord says, because you obeyed, I am releasing the storehouses of heaven over your life. Picture a lamp burning in the middle of a cave. Darkness presses on every side, but the flame holds steady. The cave cannot swallow it. The shadows cannot silence it. That lamp is you. Your obedience became light in a season of deep shadows. And now God Himself breathes on that flame until it becomes a fire. Do not think your obedience was wasted. It was a seed. Every time you surrendered, you planted. Every time you turned away from temptation, you invested. Every time you chose God over comfort, you stored up treasure where moth and rust cannot destroy. And the Lord says, the harvest season has arrived. Let me tell you a story. There was once a woman who was asked to walk away from a relationship that everyone around her thought was perfect. She obeyed. The nights were long. The tears were heavy. And loneliness whispered at her door. Friends called her foolish, saying she had let go of her only chance for happiness. But years later, she looked back and realized that her obedience had saved her from destruction. God brought her into a partnership that not only honored her, but propelled her into her true calling. Today she is funded, secure, and thriving, not because she chased blessing, but because she chose obedience. This is your reality as well. You may not yet see the full picture, but heaven is already aligning resources to meet you at the place of surrender. Every hidden yes to God has weight in eternity. Every sacrifice is being multiplied. Every act of faith is drawing down provision from heaven's treasury. Hear this clearly. Obedience is the currency of heaven. It unlocks what disobedience forfeits. When others refused, they shut doors on themselves. When you obeyed, you stepped into keys that will open what no man can shut. It is written in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 2, all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Chosen one. That is the word over your life. Blessings will not just follow you, they will overtake you. The very thing you thought you lost will run after you. Multiplied. The resources you wondered if you would ever see are already in motion toward you. Because obedience commands provision, so hear me, you are stepping into a funded future. God is not only sustaining you, He is investing in you. He is proving through your life that obedience is never in vain. The narrow road you walked is about to broaden into a path of abundance. What others forfeited by rebellion, you are receiving by surrender. And right now, I invite you to mark this moment. If this word is stirring your spirit, Do not keep it silent. Like this message. Share it with someone who needs the same reminder. And subscribe so you do not miss the next release from heaven. In the comments, declare, I obeyed, and blessing will overtake me. That declaration seals agreement between your spirit and His promise. You are not overlooked. You are not forgotten. You are standing at the threshold of funded destiny. Your obedience has opened the vaults of heaven. You may have felt invisible in the waiting. Seasons passed, and it seemed as though nothing changed. Yet the silence was never absence. It was preparation. God was watching. Heaven was recording. Every quiet act of faith became a foundation stone under your feet. Now the sound of shifting is here. Doors are opening. Provision is moving toward you with speed. Chosen one, hold your head high. You are not entering this next season empty-handed. You are stepping in fully funded, fully covered, fully supplied. You did not arrive at this place by accident. Every hidden surrender, every unseen choice to lay something down was not wasted. Heaven saw it all. In the silence of your room, when no one clapped, when no one noticed, when the weight of obedience felt like loneliness, you were not forgotten. The Father watched every sacrifice, and each one has been gathered like jewels in His hand. Sacrifice is rarely public. It happens in the quiet places. It looks like letting go of the opportunity that would have elevated you, because deep down you knew it would compromise your spirit. It looks like giving when your hands were empty, trusting that the provider would not abandon you. It looks like turning down invitations that pulled you away from His voice. Even when your heart ached for belonging, those were the silent sacrifices. No spotlight, no recognition, no applause. Just you and God. And yet, those hidden choices carried eternal weight. Think of a seed planted in the soil. No one sees it in those early days. It looks like nothing is happening. To the outside eye, the seed is forgotten. But underground, in the unseen, roots are forming. Life is pushing. And eventually, that tiny act becomes a tree strong enough to give shade to others. Your obedience has been the seed. Your silent sacrifices have been the roots. And now, in due time, the tree will rise. Consider the prophet Hosea, who was commanded by God to walk through a path of obedience that made little sense to those watching. His sacrifices were misunderstood, even criticized, yet through them, God displayed His covenant love to His people. In the same way, your hidden sacrifices are not meaningless. They are living parables of faith that heaven will use to reveal His glory. There was once a young man who carried this testimony. For years he worked tirelessly in a job that drained him, but God had whispered to him not to leave yet. While his peers advanced, traveled, and celebrated success, he stayed in the quiet, obeying. It hurt him at times. He felt forgotten, left behind. But in that season, God was shaping his character, deepening his endurance, sharpening his faith. Years later, a door opened that no resume, no networking, no strategy could have produced. It came from obedience alone. His sacrifices, hidden to others, had been remembered in heaven. That is the pattern. What you surrendered in silence is remembered loudly in heaven. The world may not know the cost of your yes, but the Father counts every tear, every choice, every moment of surrender. we are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 56, verse 8. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. Every tear shed in silence was a seed of testimony. Every lonely step was an offering. And now heaven is ready to return them with interest. Do not despise the hidden years. Do not curse the seasons of obscurity. They were not punishment, they were preservation. God was storing you away, like fine wine kept in the dark, waiting for the right time to be poured out. The value of the wine does not diminish in waiting, it increases. And so has your worth in the sight of God. You must also know this. Obedience in private builds authority in public. Many chase influence without sacrifice. But you, by obeying when no one saw, have been entrusted with something deeper than platform. You have been entrusted with heaven's trust. And when heaven trusts you, provision follows. The silent sacrifices you made are now the loud testimony God will use. Others will marvel, asking, "How did this happen for you?" And your story will point them not to strategy, but to surrender, not to shortcuts, but to the long, hidden road of obedience. Picture a violin resting in the hands of a master. Before the melody comes, the strings are tightened. The tension does not feel pleasant. Yet without it, there can be no song. Your sacrifices were the tightening of strings. And now the melody of your life is ready to be released. Chosen one, do not look back with regret. What you let go of was never loss. It was investment. It was obedience. It was love expressed in trust. And now the Father delights in honoring those unseen sacrifices, turning every hidden yes into visible provision. Every unseen moment has been woven into heaven's design for you. The weight you carried in silence is now transforming into visible glory that no one can deny. You know the sting of rejection. You know the weight of being misunderstood, cast aside, or treated as though your faithfulness was weakness. But let this truth rest in your spirit. Their rejection was never your destruction, it was your preservation. Every no you received was a shield. Every closed door was protection. The hands that pushed you away only cleared the space for God to set you apart. Rejection hurts. Yes, it pierces the heart like an arrow, but arrows can only wound what stands exposed. You, however, were hidden under the covering of God. What others meant for harm became the very soil where your endurance grew. Think of Joseph, sold by his brothers, falsely accused, thrown into prison. To those watching, his life looked like a downward spiral of rejection. But in truth, it was a divine staircase. Each painful step leading him closer to the throne, God had already prepared. Without the betrayal, he would not have reached the palace. Without rejection, he would not have been preserved for destiny. So, it has been with you. The people who turned against you, the circles that no longer welcomed you, the voices that doubted you, none of it disqualified you. It shaped you, it strengthened you, and more importantly, it separated you from what could have destroyed you. We hear the echo of Paul's words in the letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. All, even rejection, works for your good. Even betrayal bends toward your destiny. Even abandonment becomes the paintbrush God uses to write his masterpiece over your life. Let me tell you a story. There was a young woman who longed to be part of a certain group friends she admired. People she believed would carry her forward. But no matter what she did, they pushed her to the edges, made her feel invisible. She cried, asking God why she never fit in. Years later, she looked back and saw it. That group had crumbled, its members scattered, some caught in ruin. Had she been accepted, she would have been swept into the same collapse. Rejection, though painful, was her deliverance. The same is true for you. God saw the danger. You could not. He allowed the sting to save you from something greater. You were not overlooked. You were preserved. Rejection also forged your endurance. It taught you to lean on God when no one else was there. It drove you deeper into His presence, where you discovered the kind of strength that is unshakable. Endurance is not formed in applause, but in silence. And endurance is what separates the chosen from the crowd. Imagine a pearl forming inside the shell of an oyster. That pearl begins with irritation, with what feels like intrusion. Yet over time, the very thing that wounded becomes the source of beauty. That is your story. The wounds of rejection have been transformed into treasures of resilience, wisdom, and faith. And now, chosen one, you are walking into a season where the very people who doubted you will watch God's favor unfold upon you, not as revenge, but as testimony. They will see the hand of the Lord and know that rejection was never the end. It was the beginning. Before we close this section, pause here. I want you to type in the comments. Still standing. Why? Because it is your declaration. It says, I faced rejection, but I am still standing. I was pushed aside, but I am still standing. I endured storms, but I am still standing. This is not just text on a screen. It is the roar of your spirit, the sound of someone preserved by God. Carry this truth. Rejection was not the end of you. It was the making of you. And because you endured, you are ready for the unveiling of God's provision. Do not despise those seasons of being set aside. They were not wasted years. They were shaping years. What felt like delay was actually the hand of God preparing you for weight you could not yet carry. Rejection stripped away false dependencies. It taught you where your true source comes from, not from applause, not from human approval, but from the steady voice of the Father. That voice has been enough to keep you standing when everything else was shaking. And now, the strength you forged in the hidden place is about to shine in the open. You will be recognized not for chasing platforms, but for enduring through pressure. Rejection made you ready. Obedience is not only surrender, it is also investment. Every time you said yes to God, you were laying down a currency the world does not understand. In heaven's economy, obedience is wealth. It buys what money cannot. It secures what connections cannot. It opens what strategy cannot. Think of Abraham, called out from his homeland. He obeyed, leaving behind familiarity for a promise he could not yet see. His obedience became the down payment on generations of blessing. His yes purchased land, lineage, and legacy. What looked like wandering was in fact the first transaction in heaven's marketplace. This is the mystery. Obedience spends itself in the unseen, but it returns as provision in the seen. Every hidden act of faith has been building an account in heaven's treasury. You may not hold the receipts in your hands, But heaven has recorded each one, and now the account is maturing. Picture a river dammed up for a season. The waters seem still, almost silent. But behind the barrier, pressure builds. One day the gates open, and the flow is unstoppable, powerful, abundant. Your obedience has been building that pressure. The dam is ready to burst. Provision will not trickle, it will rush. This is why others around you seem stuck while you are being positioned. They tried to manipulate results. They leaned on shortcuts, on influence, on compromise. But you chose obedience. And obedience holds weight in the unseen. That weight now tips the scales in your favor. The apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, the second book, chapter 9, verse 8, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Notice the flow. Obedience leads to abundance, and abundance fuels good works. Heaven funds what heaven orders, and what has been ordered over your life is about to be supplied without measure. Let me bring you a story. There was a man who longed to start something new, an outreach that would feed the hungry in his city. But God asked him first to sow in secret, to give faithfully even when his own cupboards felt bare. He obeyed. For years, his giving looked small, hidden, unnoticed. But then, without warning, doors began to open. Grants arrived. Resources flowed. People joined his vision. What began in quiet obedience grew into a movement that fed thousands. His small yes became currency that funded a river of provision. That is how obedience works. It looks ordinary in the moment, but in heaven, it is currency. It buys the oil for the lamps, the manna in the wilderness, the ravens at the brook, the favor before kings. Chosen one, you must see yourself differently. You are not poor in obedience. You are rich. You are not lacking in surrender. You are overflowing. And the Father is faithful to release what you have stored. Think again of Joseph, his obedience to God's voice in the pit, in Potiphar's house, in the prison, built a treasury he could not see. But when the famine came, his storehouse was full, not just for himself, but for nations. Your obedience is not only for you, it carries provision for others, for families, for generations. There is a beauty here that cannot be ignored. Obedience transforms loss into credit, pain into currency, waiting into wealth. The very things you thought were draining, you were in fact funding your future. Imagine a sculptor chiseling a block of stone. Each strike seems to remove something, to take away. But what is revealed is art, shape, glory. So it has been with your life. Each moment of surrender was not subtraction, it was shaping. And now the masterpiece is ready to be unveiled. Chosen one. Obedience has written a contract in heaven over your destiny. It is sealed. It is witnessed. And now it is ready to be enacted. Others may not see the ink, but they will see the evidence. They will see doors open where none existed. They will see provision arrive without explanation. They will see your life as a living testimony that obedience is currency heaven never ignores. Hold this truth. What you laid down was not lost. It was invested. What you surrendered was not gone. It was exchanged. And now the return is drawing near. The return may not mirror what you gave, it will exceed it. That is how God works. He never simply replaces, He multiplies. What was sown in tears is reaped in joy. What felt like emptiness is now becoming overflow. Your obedience has drawn interest in heaven. And now the release will testify of His faithfulness. When you chose obedience, you didn't just give up things, you entered into an exchange. Heaven always responds to surrender. What you lost in the eyes of men, you gained in the eyes of God. And now, what you once held with trembling hands, He is ready to place back into your life, multiplied and secure. The divine exchange is not about simple replacement. It is about transformation. When you handed Him your plans, He gave you His purpose. When you released your limited resources, He opened His unlimited treasury. What seemed like subtraction became expansion. What looked like emptiness became overflow. Think about Job. He lost much family, possessions, even health. To the world, it seemed like the end. Yet when God restored him, the scripture says he received twice as much as before. His story is proof that what feels like loss is often preparation for a greater gain. Your story is moving the same way, and perhaps you already sense it. Your steps feel lighter. Your spirit feels lifted. And deep within, you know God is shifting you into a new season. You obeyed when others resisted. And now, heaven is orchestrating an exchange on your behalf. Picture a farmer who places seed into the ground. To someone watching, it looks like the farmer is losing, dropping valuable grain into dark soil where it disappears. But the farmer knows the truth. He is not losing, he is investing. And in time, the seed will return, multiplied, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That is how heaven has been treating your obedience. There was a young woman who once said yes to God when it cost her stability. She walked away from a secure position because she felt the Spirit whispering, "This is not your path." For a time, she struggled. Her hands seemed empty. Her days uncertain. Yet, little by little, God began to open doors she could not have imagined. What she thought was loss became an exchange. She gave up safety, but she gained destiny. She let go of control, but she received provision. This is how God works with His chosen ones. He asks for obedience, and in return, He provides not just what you gave, but something richer, deeper, eternal. The prophet Isaiah reminds us, chapter 61, verse 3, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. That is the exchange. Ashes for beauty, mourning for joy, emptiness for abundance. God does not leave you in loss. He turns your loss into testimony. And here, I want to pause and speak heart to heart. If these words are strengthening you, if you feel the truth of heaven stirring as you listen, I invite you to take a step with us, like this message, so others can find it. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that loss is not the end. Subscribe, so you remain connected to every new release from this ministry. And if you feel led, consider sowing a seed, supporting this channel in a way that feels right for you, not as a condition, not as a price, but as a free choice. The way a farmer freely plants seed into soil, no one forces him. He plants because he believes in the harvest. In the same way, when you give, You are not paying for words. You are planting into the soil of lives being transformed. Think of it like adding oil to a lamp. The flame is already burning, but the oil keeps it shining brighter and longer for others to see. Your support, whether through prayer, sharing, or even donation, becomes that oil. It is never demanded, never pressured. It is simply invitation. Chosen one. This is how community works in the kingdom. Some is sov, some water, and God brings the increase. If you give freely, with joy, knowing it is unto him and not unto man. If you do not give, you are still fully part of this flow. You are still his chosen, still his beloved. But if you do feel a stirring, then follow it, because every act of generosity becomes another layer in the divine exchange. You give here, and God pours back into your life in ways no one else can measure. Carry this assurance: nothing surrendered to God is wasted. Not your obedience, not your sacrifice, not even your support. Every gift, whether it is time, encouragement, prayer, or resource, is recorded in heaven's account, and the one who keeps accounts is faithful to return with abundance. You are standing in the middle of the divine exchange. What you lost is being transformed. What you gave is being multiplied, and the next chapter of your life will be the proof that God funds the lives of those who obey him. When obedience becomes your posture, heaven does not simply acknowledge it, heaven responds to it. You have walked through seasons where others turned away, yet you held the line. That endurance positioned you for what is now opening, the treasury of God himself. Chosen one. Understand this clearly. God is not just supplying your needs, he is funding your assignment. Every calling carries weight, and heaven will never allow a chosen one to step into purpose without provision. What has been locked away is now being released. Think of Elijah at the brook. He did not chase provision, it chased him. Ravens carried bread and meat morning and evening. Later, when the brook dried, a widow's house became his storehouse. It was never about the man, it was always about the mission. Provision followed purpose. And so it will be for you. For months, maybe years, you have lived carefully, waiting, stretching, wondering how long the lack would last. But lack has been a classroom, teaching you trust. Now that the lesson is learned, the Father is shifting you into overflow. The season of stretching becomes the season of supply. Imagine a dam about to break open. Pressure has built, waters have swelled, and suddenly the gates give way. That is what is happening in your life. The treasury of heaven has been building pressure, and now the release begins. Not just enough to survive, but enough to build, enough to bless, enough to expand. There was once a man who prayed earnestly for years for the resources to begin what God had placed in his heart. He had no wealthy backers, no strong connections, nothing the world counts as advantage. Yet he obeyed. He studied, prepared, stayed faithful. At the right moment, doors opened, funds arrived from unexpected places, sometimes from strangers, sometimes from those he least expected. He wept, not because of the money, but because it proved God had been listening all along. Provision followed obedience. This is your reality. What you thought you lacked, heaven already assigned. The moment you said yes to your calling, Resources were ordered to follow you, and though the timing felt slow, the arrival is certain. The Word of God declares in the book of Haggai, chapter 2, verse 8, "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty. All resources belong to Him. Banks may hold wealth, men may manage it, but ownership is His, and when He decides to fund your life, no hand can withhold it. You are not stepping into this season empty-handed. You are stepping in backed by heaven's authority, resourced by heaven's supply. And the beauty is this: the very systems that failed others will serve you. Where others found closed doors, you will find favor. Where others encountered denial, you will see approval. Because obedience carries authority in realms where money alone cannot speak. Picture a torch in the darkness. The flame does not just light the path, it attracts others who are searching. Your provision will not be private. It will shine, drawing others. Testifying of the faithfulness of God, people will know that what you carry did not come from human strength. It came from the treasury of heaven. Do not fear the future. Do not count the coins in your hand as if they are the measure of your destiny. They are not. Your destiny is measured by God's call. And where He calls, He funds. This is the moment to anchor your faith. Heaven is saying, I am financing what I have commanded. I am backing what I have birthed. I am providing for what I have purposed. Now, pause here. To mark your agreement with this word, I invite you to comment one prophetic number, 444. Why this number? Because it symbolizes foundation, 4 corners, 4 winds, 4 pillars. It declares that what God is building in your life is unshakable. By typing 444, you are saying, my life is established on the foundation of obedience, and heaven is funding it. This is not superstition. It is declaration. It is alignment. When you write it, you remind your spirit and declare to the unseen realm, I am standing on God's foundation, and nothing can move me. Chosen one, the treasury of heaven is open over you. Walk forward with confidence. What you need has already been assigned. What you thought was out of reach is already in motion. God Himself is funding your life. Do not shrink back when the flow begins. Receive it with gratitude. Walk in it with humility. And use it with purpose. This provision is not random, it is targeted. Designed to carry you deeper into destiny. The foundations of this world are shaking. Systems people once trusted are trembling. Governments groan under pressure. And economies rise and fall like waves in a storm. Many cling to these unstable pillars, hoping they will hold, only to watch them crumble. Yet for you, chosen one, this shaking is not your ruin, it is your release. When human systems collapse, divine systems take over. What fails them funds you. What denies them delivers to you, because your source was never anchored in the world's structures. Your source has always been heaven. Think of Egypt during the days of Moses. The empire looked unshakable, its power, its wealth, its armies. Yet one word from God unraveled it. Plagues struck, idols fell, and the people who had been enslaved walked out carrying silver and gold. The very system that oppressed them became the vessel of their funding. What man trusted collapsed. What God ordained prevailed. So it will be in your life. The structures others depended on may falter, but you will stand. The resources others lose will flow into your hands, not because you sought it, but because you trusted the rock that cannot be shaken. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Nahum. Chapter 1, verse 7. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble, and he knows those who trust in him. Oh, the day of trouble exposes foundations. Those who trusted in their own strength are left with ashes, but those who trusted in him are preserved, known, and resourced. That is you. Imagine a great tree in a storm. The winds rage. Branches snap. Smaller plants are uprooted. Yet the tree that has deep roots holds. When the storm passes, it is not destroyed, it is stronger. Because the shaking removed what was weak. Your life is like that tree. The shaking around you has not uprooted you. It has proved your depth. You have already felt this. Opportunities, others, clung to dissolved. But you endured. Doors they celebrated closed. Yet you remained standing. Why? Because you were never held up by shallow roots. Your obedience drove you deep into God's soil. And that soil cannot be moved. There was once a man who poured years into building his business. Everyone said he was secure, untouchable. But when markets shifted, everything collapsed. Money mocked him. But what they didn't know was that years earlier he had learned to listen for God's voice. And in that collapse, he pivoted with wisdom. While others lost everything, he rose again, not because he was cleverer, but because his foundation was obedience. That is the testimony you are about to carry. Others will wonder how you stood when everything shook. They will see stability in you while chaos reigns around them. And through your life, they will understand this truth. Heaven funds those who trust in him. The systems that fail them will serve you. When scarcity strikes one place, supply will flow from another. When rejection closes a door, favor will open a gate. This is the paradox of the chosen. You are preserved, not by chance, but by covenant. Picture a candle in a pitch-black room. The power grid may fail. The machines may shut down. But that single flame continues to burn. It becomes the light everyone else gathers around. That is you. The shaking will only highlight what was already inside of you. Chosen one. Do not fear the instability you see. The collapse is not your threat, it is your confirmation. It proves that your trust was rightly placed. It reveals that you are held by a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Hebrews declares this. Chapter 12, verse 28. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, and so worship God acceptably, with reverence and awe. You live from a kingdom beyond collapse. You belong to an economy not tied to markets. You are part of a treasury that does not run dry. That is why, even as foundations crumble, you will be funded. Carry this picture when the ground shakes. Gold rises to the surface. Earthquakes uncover hidden treasure. In the same way, the shaking around you is not exposing your ruin, it is uncovering your inheritance. What was buried is rising. What was hidden is appearing. So walk with confidence. The world may tremble, but you will not. Others may scramble, but you will stand. Because your foundation is obedience. And obedience secures funding, even in famine. And when the dust settles, people will look for answers. They will remember the one who did not fall. the one still standing, the one shining. Your stability will preach louder than any words ever could. Multiplication has always been the mark of God's touch. What rests in your hands may look small, but when He breathes upon it, it expands beyond reason. This is the mantle that rests on your life now, the mantle of multiplication. Think of the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. In his hands, it was a meal for one. In Jesus' hands, it became a banquet for thousands. What seemed insignificant turned into overflow. And not only were the crowds fed, but 12 baskets of leftovers remained. That is how God multiplies. He does not only meet the need, He surpasses it. Chosen one. You must not underestimate the smallness of what you hold, the seed in your hand, the skill you carry, the idea that others laugh at when surrendered to God. It is never small. It is the raw material for multiplication. There was once a woman who worked long hours with little pay. She often wondered if her small acts of kindness, her faithful tithes, or her quiet service even mattered. But slowly, God began to multiply her reach. A simple meal shared with a neighbor became the spark of community. A small prayer whispered over her child became the testimony of healing. Years later, she looked back and saw how her small acts had multiplied into stories that touched countless lives. That is the mantle resting upon you. The world may call it little, but heaven calls it seed. And seed, in the soil of obedience, cannot remain small. The Apostle Paul writes in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 9, verse 10, Now, He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed, and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. Notice the promise. He not only gives seed, but He increases it. He enlarges it. He multiplies it. Picture a single spark in the darkness, alone. It seems fragile, almost fleeting. But when it catches, it becomes a blaze, then a fire, then a beacon that warms, lights, and guides. So it will be with you. Your obedience has been the spark, and now multiplication will carry it into a flame that others cannot ignore. Do not despise your beginnings. Do not mock your own offering. What you thought was too small, God sees as the perfect vessel for His multiplication. Remember the widow of Zarephath. She had only a handful of flour and a little oil, enough for one last meal. Yet when she obeyed the word of the prophet, her jar did not run dry. Day after day, it multiplied until the famine ended. Multiplication is not only about increase, it is about endurance. What should have ended early lasted as long as it needed to. So it is with you. What you thought would not last, God will stretch. What you feared was too little, He will expand. What looked like insufficiency will become more than enough. Imagine planting a single vine in a barren field. At first, it looks like nothing, but give it time, and the vine spreads, climbs, and fills the space with fruit. Your life is that vine. It may start with a single act of faith, a single yes, a single step. But under the mantle of multiplication, it will cover ground far beyond what you imagined. Chosen one. This is not only about resources, it is about your influence, your testimony, your legacy, the words you speak in obedience, the prayers you release in secret, the love you show in faith. All of it multiplies. You may not see the full reach, but heaven does, and in eternity, the harvest will be greater than you can measure. There is a principle here. God never asks you to produce multiplication by your own strength. He only asks you to bring the seed. He provides the soil, the rain, the growth, the harvest. Your role is obedience. His role is increase. Carry this with you. What is in your hand today is enough for tomorrow's miracle. The mantle of multiplication ensures that nothing surrendered to him stays the same. It grows. It stretches. It reaches. It multiplies. And soon, others will look at your life and see the fruit of multiplication. They will marvel not at your strength, but at his hand, and your story will become a testimony that obedience, when placed in God's hands, always multiplies beyond measure. Even the smallest yes carries the weight of eternity when placed in God's hands. What you thought insignificant will ripple outward like waves in water, touching lives you never imagined and shaping futures far beyond your sight. Reverence has been your anchor, while pride ruined others. The fear of the Lord preserved you. You may not even realize how many times that holy awe, the choice to honor him above all, shielded your path. It kept you when arrogance destroyed others. It humbled you when self-promotion consumed them. The fear of the Lord is not terror, it is trust. It is recognizing that he is holy, Zopha'in, and worthy of obedience. It is bowing your will not because you are forced, but because you understand his way is higher. And that reverence has marked your life with safety, wisdom, and now, reward. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 9, verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Look back and see, others rushed ahead, ignoring the gentle warnings of the Spirit. They believed they knew better, but you slowed down. You listened. You waited. And though it felt costly at times, it saved you from snares. Reverence became your shield. Imagine walking through a dense forest, the reckless charge ahead, trampling over branches, unaware of the traps hidden in the ground. But the careful traveler pauses, listens, pays attention. That carefulness spares his life. That is what the fear of the Lord has done for you. It turned what could have been ruin into rescue. There was a man who once told his story. He had an opportunity to sign a lucrative deal. Everything looked perfect on paper. Yet when he prayed, he felt unrest. Against the advice of peers, he walked away. Months later, the deal collapsed, leaving others bankrupt. His reverence preserved him. He said, "I didn't know what was coming, but I knew who I trusted." This is the fruit of the fear of the Lord. It positions you for long-term blessing, not short-term gain. It may cost you applause today, but it secures your destiny tomorrow. Picture a lighthouse again, not the one that shines only for itself, but the one whose beam warns ships away from rocks. That is your life. The reverence inside you has not only preserved you, it has protected others who watch your example. And now, the Lord is rewarding that reverence. Where pride built fragile towers, humility built an unshakable house. And you will see the difference. You will walk in wisdom while others stumble in confusion. You will inherit peace while others chase chaos. This is not because you are better, but because you feared the Lord. And the fear of the Lord never leaves a life empty. It always brings reward. Pause here for a moment. Let your spirit agree with what heaven is saying. And as a prophetic act, I invite you to type in the comments, I choose wisdom. Why? Because those 3 words are a declaration. They remind your heart of the path you have chosen and the future it secures. They echo in the unseen realm, marking you again as one who honors the Lord above all. Carry this truth. Reverence preserved you where pride ruined others. And now, it will not only preserve you, it will reward you. Think of Saul and David. Saul was given a throne, but lost it because pride blinded him. David, though flawed, trembled before the Lord. His reverence kept him even when enemies surrounded him. Even when mistakes weighed heavy. That difference is the same difference God is drawing now between those who dismissed his voice and those who honored it. Reverence is like an inner compass. It points you away from what looks glittering but dangerous, guiding you toward what looks hidden but safe. Others may laugh at your caution, but when storms come, you will still be standing. And this is the mystery. Wisdom birthed from reverence not only spares you from destruction, it positions you for multiplication. While others rebuild what was ruined, you will be building upon foundations that were never shaken. So do not despise your carefulness. Do not regret your pauses. Each moment you chose to stop, to ask, to wait. That was the Spirit preserving your future. And now the harvest of reverence is near. Wisdom will open doors no charm can unlock. Understanding will protect wealth no scheme can secure. And peace will anchor your heart where fear cannot reach. Your reverence has been tested, but it has also been proven. And what has been proven cannot be taken away. From this point forward, every step you take will carry the fragrance of wisdom, the security of trust, and the undeniable evidence that honoring God always brings reward. There are doors in life that no human hand can open. You have watched others try. They pushed with influence, pulled with money, and demanded with pride. But those doors did not move. They stayed shut. Because they were never designed to yield to human effort. They were reserved for divine obedience. Chosen one. This is where your story shifts. You obeyed where others disobeyed. You bowed where others boasted. And now heaven is unlocking the gates they could not enter. Remember Joshua at Jericho. The walls were impossible. No human tool could bring them down. Yet when the people obeyed God's instruction, the walls crumbled under heaven's command. Obedience, not force, unlocked the impossible, and you are about to witness the same. The Apostle Paul speaks in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 8. See, I have placed before you an open door no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. This is your word. The door has been opened, not by strength, but by obedience. What denied others will yield to you. What seemed impossible will suddenly shift. Not because you pushed harder, but because you bowed lower. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who dreamed of studying in a place far beyond his means. He applied, but rejection came again and again. Years passed, and he nearly gave up. But in a quiet moment of prayer, God whispered, "Stay faithful where you are. Prepare as if the door is already open." He obeyed. Months later, without warning, the very institution that once rejected him sent an invitation, not only to study, but fully funded. The same doors that refused him opened wide, because God himself held the keys. This is how God works. He does not give you doors that pride can unlock, but doors only humility can enter, so that when they open, you know beyond doubt it was him. Picture a hallway with many doors. Some are shut, some are locked, some are sealed tight. Others crowd the hallway, rattling handles, frustrated that nothing yields. And then you arrive not with noise, but with a quiet step of faith. The key is already waiting in your hand. You turn it gently, and the door swings wide, not because you demanded, but because you carried the key of obedience. And here, I want to speak from the heart. These words you are hearing are also a door. They open encouragement in weary hearts, light in heavy places, hope in tired souls. And every time you help carry these words further, you become part of that opening. When you press the button to like this message, it is like placing a small candle in the window of your house. Someone passing in the dark sees it and finds comfort. When you share it, it is like opening your gate and letting light spill into the street. Someone lost may glance up and realize there is a way home. When you subscribe, it is like planting your chair at the family table, saying, I want to stay close. I want to keep hearing what heaven is serving. End of. And if you ever feel stirred to give, donating becomes like placing another brick in the foundation of this house. Each brick strengthens the walls, so the doors we open together stay strong for others to pass through. This is not obligation. No one is forced to light a candle, open a gate, pull up a chair, or add a brick. But when someone chooses to, the beauty multiplies. The house grows brighter, safer, warmer for all who wander near. Chosen one. This is what kingdom partnership looks like. Every act of support, whether simple or sacrificial, becomes part of the story of doors opening. You are not buying a blessing, you are fueling the light that points others toward theirs. Now, let this truth rest in you. What was closed to others is opening for you. What they chased in vain will come to you by grace. You will walk through doors that bear your name, not because of your power, but because of his promise. And as you pass through, remember, doors are not only for entry, but for testimony. When you step into new spaces, others will see and know this was God's doing. Walk forward with confidence. The handle is turning, the gates are unlocking, and heaven's doors are swinging wide before you. And as you cross these thresholds, remember, each new door is not just for you. It becomes an invitation for others. Your testimony is the key that will remind them. If God opened it for you, He can open it for them. There is a difference between just having enough to survive and living in overflow. Survival means your needs are met. Overflow means your needs are met and more is released, so that others may be touched through your life. You are not stepping into survival, you are stepping into overflow. Overflow is not waste. It is not luxury for the sake of pride. It is the natural outcome when heaven funds obedience. When a cup is filled to the brim and still poured into, the water cannot help but spill out. That is what God is doing with you now, filling you to the point where His goodness cannot be contained. Think of David's words in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. An overflowing cup is more than enough. It is the picture of divine abundance, even in the presence of enemies. When opposition surrounds, God does not simply keep you alive, He causes you to overflow. That is where you are standing now. There was a woman who once shared her story. For years, she lived paycheck to paycheck, stretching every coin, wondering if she would ever know what it felt like to breathe easy. But she clung to obedience, giving when it hurt, trusting when it was risky, following God's whispers even when others mocked. Years later, she looked back and realized something had shifted. She was no longer counting pennies, she was blessing others. She had moved from scarcity into overflow. She wept not because she had wealth, but because she finally understood. Obedience had unlocked more than survival. It had unlocked abundance. This is the promise that rests on you. You are stepping into a dimension where your needs will not be your only concern because they will be met. Your focus will shift to who you can bless, where you can give, how you can pour into others. That is the mark of overflow. Imagine a spring bubbling in the desert. At first it looks small, just enough to quench your thirst. But as the flow increases, it creates a stream, then a river. Others gather, plants grow. What once was barren becomes green. Your life is that spring. The overflow will not only sustain you, but it will transform the environment around you. Overflow also changes perspective. When you lived in survival, your prayers were often about daily bread. But in overflow, your prayers shift no longer, Lord, keep me alive, but Lord, use me to give life. The same God who carried you in famine will now trust you with plenty. Think of Joseph again. When famine struck Egypt, people came desperate just for grain. But Joseph had more than enough. His storehouses were full, not only for himself, but for nations. That is overflow. Abundance assigned, not for pride, but for purpose. There was a young man who dreamed of helping children in need, but for years, his resources barely covered his own survival. Still, he obeyed, helping where he could, giving small amounts, never despising the little. In time, God expanded his reach. Suddenly, he found himself funding schools, feeding families, supporting entire communities. He used to pray for enough. Now he prays for wisdom to steward overflow. Chosen one. This is where you are headed. The season of scraping by is ending. The season of overflow is beginning. And this overflow is not about possessions alone. It is about peace, joy, wisdom, and strength. Your cup will run over in every dimension. Picture a lamp filled with oil. It shines brightly in your room. But when it overflows, the oil runs and lights other lamps. One flame becomes many. This is the image of your life. The oil of provision will spill over and ignite others, creating a chain of blessing. Do not fear overflow. Some shrink back, feeling unworthy of abundance. But remember, overflow is not about you alone. It is about assignment. It is about testimony. It is about showing the world that God funds those who obey Him. So stand tall, lift your cup, let it overflow, and watch how the abundance that fills your life becomes the very stream that nourishes others. Overflow is also generational. What God pours into you will not stop with you. It will touch your children, and even your children's children. The blessings you receive now will build platforms they will stand on later. This is why you cannot shrink back. When your cup runs over, it flows down into every life connected to you, ensuring that legacy is marked not by scarcity, but by abundance. Every assignment from God carries its own provision. When He calls, He also funds. You are not stepping into this next chapter empty-handed. Heaven has already allocated resources for every step, every project, every dream aligned with His will for your life. Think of Noah. He was asked to build an ark, a task far beyond his means. Yet the same God who gave the command brought the animals, provided the wood, and sustained him through the flood. Noah did not have to beg the world for help. Heaven funded his obedience. So it is with you. The visions in your heart are not fantasies. They are blueprints of heaven. And what heaven designs, heaven finances. You may not see the entire picture yet, but trust this: every tool, every connection, every resource is already on its way. Imagine an architect who designs a great building. The moment the design is approved, funds are set aside to bring it to life. Workers are hired, materials ordered, schedule is written. The builder doesn't wonder if resources will come. He knows they have been assigned because the plan has been approved. In the same way, your obedience has approved the blueprint. Now, Heaven's treasury is releasing what is required. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 37, verse 25. I was young, and now I am old. Yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken, or their children begging bread. And this is the promise over you. You will not beg for what God has already provided. You will not scrape for what heaven has already assigned. Your obedience has positioned you under an open treasury. There was a woman who felt called to begin a small ministry for widows in her city. She had nothing, no funds, no building, not even a clear plan. But she obeyed. She gathered 2 women in her living room. Weeks later, a neighbor heard what she was doing and offered space for free. Months later, another person offered supplies. Eventually, donors appeared without her asking. The ministry grew, not because she had wealth, but because she had obedience. Heaven funded what it had authored. This is your story. The assignment on your life is not a burden. It is a testimony waiting to be revealed. Every gap you see will be filled. Every lack you feel will be supplied. Every resource you need is already in motion. Picture a river that splits into streams. Each stream flows exactly where it is needed, one to water the crops, another to quench thirst, another to carry goods. So it will be with the provision of God in your life. It will not be random. It will be precise, flowing into every corner of your calling, supplying exactly what is needed at exactly the right time. Now, let your heart respond. To mark your agreement with this word, type in the comments 888. End of 4. Why this number? Because 8 represents new beginnings, and 888 declares overflowing new beginnings. By writing 888, you are saying, I step into a funded future. I receive new doors, new provision, new grace. This is not ritual. It is declaration. It is alignment between your faith and God's promise. Chosen one, never forget, you are not alone in your mission. You are backed by the treasury of heaven. Your obedience unlocked it. Your surrender secured it. And now, your steps will be funded until the work is complete. And when you begin to walk in this funded season, Do not be surprised if the provision comes from places you least expect. God loves to show his children that he is not limited by channels. What you thought was closed may suddenly open. What you thought was too small may suddenly expand. What you thought was impossible may suddenly become your reality. Provision will not always look dramatic. Sometimes it will arrive as daily bread, steady, consistent, enough for each step forward. Other times it will rush in like a flood, abundant, overwhelming, more than you imagined. Both are miracles. Both are heaven's language of support. Remember, this is not only about financial resources. It is about wisdom when you face choices. It is about strength when you feel weak. It is about people sent to walk beside you when the journey feels long. All of these are God's ways of funding your assignment. He will never send you without equipping you. Chosen one, you are stepping into a rhythm of divine provision. Each step forward will reveal what is waiting. Each act of obedience will unlock another measure. You will not be stranded. You will not be abandoned. You will be carried, supplied, and sustained until your task is complete. So, breathe deep, trust fully, walk boldly, for the treasury of heaven is open, and it has your name written across it. The enemy has always tried to steal from you. He came to rob your joy, drain your strength, and strip away what was meant to carry you forward. Yet he has failed, because heaven has issued a decree: what was stolen must be returned, and not in equal measure, but multiplied. The word of God thunders in the book of Proverbs, chapter 6, verse 31. Yet if he is caught, he must pay sevenfold, though it costs him all the wealth of his house. This is the promise written over your life. What was stolen will not simply be replaced, it will be restored sevenfold. The enemy's attempt to weaken you will become the very reason your increase is undeniable. Look back over your journey. Consider the seasons where you felt emptied, where doors slammed shut, where betrayal cut deep. Those were the enemy's attempts to drain you. He hoped that if he stole enough, you would stop believing, stop trusting, stop obeying. But you didn't. You endured. And because you endured, heaven now steps in with restoration. Imagine a field scorched by fire. At first glance, it looks barren, lifeless, beyond recovery. But beneath the ash, sates remain hidden. When the rain comes, new life springs forth, and not only does the field recover, it returns stronger, richer, more fertile than before. That is what your life is about to show. The fire of loss did not consume you, it prepared the ground for increase. There was once a man who testified of this truth. He had been betrayed in business, losing everything he built. Friends turned, resources drained, his name dragged through the mud. For a time, he thought it was the end, but he chose to remain faithful. Years later, not only was his reputation restored, but the new opportunities that opened exceeded anything he had before. He said, "What I thought was my ruin became my rebirth." God didn't just give back, he gave more. 7. This is the divine order of restoration. What the enemy tried to steal becomes the evidence of heaven's repayment. What you lost becomes the testimony of God's faithfulness. Think also of Job. He endured devastating loss, family, health, wealth. The enemy struck him with fury. Yet when the trial ended, The Lord restored to him twice what he had before. His story was not ruin, but redemption. Your story carries that same promise. Chosen one, hear this. The enemy has no final word over you. He may strike, but he cannot keep. He may wound, but he cannot own. Every attack only sets the stage for God's restoration. Picture a vessel cracked and broken. To the world, it looks useless, but in the hands of a master, the cracks are filled with gold, making the vessel more valuable than it ever was before. This is your life. The enemy's attempt to break you has only made you more radiant in God's hands. Restoration is not about getting back what you had. It is about stepping into more than you imagined. It is about watching the years the locusts devoured be repaid with harvests overflowing. It is about receiving not scraps, but abundance. And this restoration will not be private. Those who watched you lose will also watch you rise, not for revenge, but for testimony. They will see that heaven's hand was upon you all along. Do not be surprised if restoration comes from unexpected places. The very area where you were attacked may become the channel of your blessing. The same setting that once mocked you may become the platform for your honor. God loves to reverse the story so completely that even your scars shine with purpose. Chosen one, this is your inheritance. Restoration multiplied. The enemy's theft has triggered heaven's repayment. You will not remain empty. You will not remain stripped. You will walk in replenishment so evident that no one will be able to deny it. Lift your head high. The enemy tried, but he failed. You are not walking out of this season with less. You are walking out with more. Sevenfold restoration belongs to you. And when the restoration begins, it will come like a flood, not in fragments, not in pieces, but in a way that leaves you breathless. You will stand in awe, realizing that the very things you once mourned are now being rewritten into miracles. Each tear becomes a seed of joy. Each scar becomes a testimony of strength. And in that overflow, others will be drawn to your story, because they will see the God who restores, not partially, but completely. There is a powerful truth you must embrace. Your life is not only funded, it is an investment from heaven. God has placed His resources, His wisdom, His favor, and His Spirit within you, as proof that what He ordains, He sustains. You are not wandering aimlessly. You are a living demonstration that heaven backs what heaven births. Think of a craftsman who pours countless hours into shaping a single instrument. He does not waste his time on what he will not use. He invests in what will one day carry his song. In the same way, God has invested deeply in you because He intends for your life to release His sound on the earth. Every provision you receive is not random, it is purposeful. Every connection, every open door, every stream of resources is aimed at one thing, the fulfillment of your assignment. You are heaven's project, carefully resourced to reveal God's glory. The Apostle Paul reminds us in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 19. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. This scripture reveals your identity as God's dwelling place, His chosen vessel. He has placed His Spirit within you. And if He has placed His Spirit, will He not also provide everything else needed to carry out His will? Look around you. Reflect on the seasons of your life. Consider the times when you had nothing left, yet somehow you endured. That endurance itself was evidence of investment. Heaven supplied the strength when your own strength failed. Heaven provided wisdom when confusion surrounded you. Heaven gave hope when despair tried to silence you. There was a young man who once shared his testimony. He said, "I thought I had nothing, no money, no plan, no chance. But then I realized every time I prayed, clarity came. Every time I obeyed, doors opened. Every time I gave, joy multiplied. I had been funded all along, not from my wallet, but from heaven's hand." His life became proof that when God invests, the return is guaranteed. You, too, carry that same witness. You have been entrusted with divine backing. What others scramble for in their own strength flows to you in God's timing, not because you deserve it by merit, but because you are chosen, ordained, and funded. Picture a vineyard. The owner plants vines, waters them, tends them, prunes them. Why? Because he expects fruit. He invests care because he knows the harvest will come. In the same way, every pruning you endured was part of God's investment in you. The seasons that felt painful were not punishment, they were preparation for greater yield. Do not mistake waiting for neglect. Do not mistake silence for absence. In those very seasons, heaven was increasing its investment, depositing strength you did not know you had, courage you did not know you carried, and wisdom you did not know you needed. This is why you can walk confidently into the next chapter. You are not moving on empty. You are moving with the weight of heaven's backing. And when God invests, He expects to showcase the return. Your life will become undeniable evidence that obedience is never wasted. Think of Esther, a young woman, seemingly ordinary, yet placed in the palace. She did not arrive there by chance. God invested beauty, favor, and courage in her life. For a moment, when her obedience would save a nation, your life carries that same kind of strategic weight. You may not yet see the full scope of it, but heaven's investment in you has purpose beyond your imagination. Chosen one, hold this close. You are heaven's investment. Your story is not small. Your provision is not random. Every detail has been intentional. Every supply has been deliberate. You were never meant to live as though you are forgotten. You are meant to live as proof that when God chooses, He funds. And when He funds, He fulfills. Walk forward now with this awareness. You are carrying heaven's investment, and heaven never invests in vain. And when others look at you, they will see more than a survivor. They will see a vessel entrusted with something sacred. They will realize that your life could not have been sustained by chance alone. They will recognize the fingerprints of God, who poured His Spirit and His provision into you. Your testimony will remind them that heaven does not waste its resources. If God has invested so much in you, it is because He has destined you to carry much fruit. There will always be a visible difference between those who obeyed and those who didn't. That difference is not rooted in pride but in promise. Obedience leaves marks that cannot be hidden. Peace in the middle of storms, provision in seasons of famine, clarity when others stumble in confusion. The line between covenant and convenience is now becoming clear for all to see. Think of Israel in Egypt. On the night of Passover, the blood on the doorposts marked the homes of the obedient. When destruction swept through the land, it passed over them. That mark made the distinction. Others may have had wealth, position or power, but only obedience created protection. In the same way, your obedience has drawn a line around your life that nothing can erase. The prophet Malachi echoes this in chapter 3, verse 18. And you will again see the distinction between the righteous and the wicked, between those who serve God and those who do not. That distinction is not abstract, it is visible. It shows in the calmness on your face while others live in fear. It shows in the supply you carry when others lack. It shows in the steady path you walk when others are stumbling. The difference is not your own doing, it is the mark of obedience. There was once a young woman who shared her story. She said, "I used to envy those who seemed to get ahead without God. Their paths looked smooth. Mine looked slow. But years later, their shortcuts collapsed. Meanwhile, my steady walk in obedience built a foundation I now stand on with joy." People ask why my life feels anchored, and I tell them it is because I chose obedience. That testimony is what your life will speak. You are becoming living evidence that obedience carries reward. Those who laughed will see the fruit. Those who doubted will witness the difference. Now pause for a moment. This word you are hearing is itself like a lamp. Its flame is meant to shine far and wide, but lamps burn brighter when oil is added. And here is where your part can become beautiful. When you like this message, it is as if you are adding a drop of oil into the flame. The light grows steadier, stronger, reaching further into the dark. When you share it, it is like opening your window and letting that light spill into the streets. So someone wandering outside might see it and realize they are not alone. When you subscribe, it is as if you are choosing to sit at the table each time the lamp is lit, saying, "I want to return to this glow. I want to keep drawing warmth and clarity from it." And when you comment below, it is like etching your name on the wall of this lighthouse, saying, "I was here. I stood with the flame." Every word you leave becomes part of the testimony that this light touched your journey. And if your heart ever stirs toward generosity, donating becomes like laying another stone on the lighthouse standing by the sea. With each stone, the tower rises taller, its beam reaching further, guiding more ships safely to shore. This is not demand, nor is it debt. It is invitation. It is the beauty of partnership in the kingdom. Each act of support becomes part of the distinction, not between who is valuable and who is not, but between those who choose to nurture the flame and those who walk past it. The line of obedience is visible not just in provision, but in the willingness to sustain what God is doing. And every time you choose to take part, you are writing your name into the story of the flame. Picture this in a crowd. Some rush by, distracted by their own pursuits, but a few pause. Seeing the glow, they cup their hands, shielding the flame from the wind. They add oil. They guard it. They honor it. And because of them, the flame is not just preserved, it grows. You are one of those, chosen one. Your obedience has already drawn the line, but your choices now will continue to magnify that difference, not for your glory, but for His. And in the days to come, many will look and see, the ones who obeyed are the ones shining, supplied, and sustained. So let your life remain the lamp. Let the distinction shine clearly. And may your steps continue to prove that heaven funds what heaven marks. And when the light grows, it will not only guide you, but also those who never knew they needed direction. Your faithfulness becomes their compass, and your distinction becomes their hope in the middle of wandering nights. There is a dimension of provision that goes beyond supply for daily needs. It is called dominion. Dominion means you are not merely surviving with just enough, nor only living in overflow for yourself, but you are resourced to establish influence, to carry out kingdom authority on the earth. From the beginning, God intended His chosen ones to rule, not to beg. In Genesis, He blessed mankind and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it." Dominion was always in the design. And when you obeyed, you aligned yourself again with that original intention. Think of Joshua stepping into the promised land. He was not sent there simply to dwell. He was commanded to possess. Cities were to be taken, territories claimed, nations influenced. And what made this possible was not Joshua's military skill alone. It was the provision of God backing every step. Heaven financed the conquest, because heaven had authored the promise. Dominion is not about control for personal pride. It is about establishing the reign of God's will in spaces where darkness once ruled. It means businesses become platforms of integrity. Families become testimonies of faith. Communities become landscapes of blessing. And each of these requires provision, because vision without resources remains a dream. But vision with God's funding becomes reality. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 8, verse 18 declares, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms His covenant, which He swore to your ancestors, as it is today." This verse reminds you that wealth is not random, nor is it the prize of striving alone. It is the empowerment of God to establish covenant. Provision flows not to feed ego, but to fuel kingdom dominion. Picture a king who entrusts his ambassador with resources. The ambassador does not use them for his own luxury, but to represent the king's agenda in foreign lands. That is who you are, an ambassador resourced for kingdom work. The authority on your life is not symbolic, it is practical, backed with real provision. There was once a woman who longed to see her city transformed. She prayed faithfully, but she also obeyed the small instructions God gave her, helping one family, then another. Over time, opportunities opened, support flowed in. Eventually, she began initiatives that touched hundreds. When asked how she did it, she said, "I never chased influence. I just obeyed each step. And every time I obeyed, God funded the next one." This is dominion in action. Obedience backed by heaven's resources until entire communities are changed. Dominion also shifts how you see provision. You no longer measure by what you consume, but by what you establish. You do not ask, "Do I have enough to survive?" Instead you ask, "Do I have enough to build?" And heaven answers yes, because building is in the heart of God. Imagine a lamp on a table. In survival, the lamp only lights your space. In overflow, it spills into your neighbor's space. But in dominion, you do not stop at one lamp. You build a tower with a beacon, lighting the whole city. That is where God is positioning you, no longer just a recipient of light, but a distributor of it on a large scale. Chosen one, do not shrink from this. Dominion is not arrogance. Dominion is assignment. It is the proof that God funds not only your personal journey, but also your kingdom mission. you have been preserved, tested, supplied, and now anointed to walk in authority. This authority will manifest in simple yet powerful ways. You will speak, and atmospheres will shift. You will act, and doors will respond. You will build, and others will gather. Not because of who you are alone, but because of the one who funds you, empowers you, and crowns you for dominion. So lift your vision higher. No longer ask merely for your own provision. Ask for cities, for families, for generations. For God delights in resourcing the dreams that align with His covenant. And your obedience has qualified you to receive. Chosen one. Step forward. Dominion awaits. And when you step into dominion, it will not look like conquest by force. It will look like influence by faith. Your words will carry unusual weight. Your presence will shift atmospheres. And your decisions will plant seeds that outlast you. Dominion means you no longer merely witness change. You become the channel through which God ushers it in. That is why provision flows so strongly in this season. It is not simply to comfort you, but to equip you for impact. What you build in obedience will stand as evidence that heaven invests, where heaven rules. You are stepping into a season where provision is no longer a question, but a crown. Every act of obedience, every hidden surrender, every quiet sacrifice has led you to this moment where heaven declares not only that you are supplied, but that you are crowned with provision. A crown is not given for survival. It is a sign of recognition, authority, and honor. And the provision being released over your life is not just about meeting needs, it is about marking you as one chosen, entrusted, and established. Others may still be chasing scraps, but you are being seated at a table where abundance flows freely. Think again of Joseph. From prison to palace, his journey was paved with obedience and tested through suffering. But when the crown was placed upon his head, it carried more than authority. It carried provision. Nations were fed through his stewardship. His crown was not a decoration, it was a channel of supply. The same principle rests upon you. The provision flowing into your life will not be aimless. It will be purposeful, destined to impact lives beyond your own. The book of James, chapter 1, verse 12 speaks to this. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love Him. Lo, this crown is not merely symbolic, it is tangible evidence of perseverance rewarded. You endured, and now you are stepping into a season where your perseverance becomes provision, your faith becomes fruit, and your surrender becomes supply. Picture a garden after a long winter. The ground looks barren, the trees bare, the air cold, but beneath the soil, life has been waiting. And when the appointed season comes, blossoms burst forth, fruit appears, and fragrance fills the air. That is the image of your destiny now. The barren years were not wasted. They were preparing the ground for bloom. Now the season of crown and provision has come. There was a man who lived through decades of hardship. He obeyed quietly, worked faithfully, gave generously, even when little remained. To the outside world, it seemed as though nothing significant would come from his life. But in his later years, doors began to open, and resources began to flow. His influence stretched further than he imagined, and his story inspired generations after him. He said, "I thought my obedience was unseen, but God never forgot. His crown was not simply placed on his head, it overflowed into his legacy. That is the truth about crowns. They are not just ornaments, they are signals. They tell the world who has been chosen, who has endured, and who has been entrusted with responsibility. When God crowns you with provision, it will not be subtle. Others will notice. They will see the evidence of God's hand upon your life. And this crown is not temporary. It is not like the shifting wealth of the world that fades and corrodes. This crown is rooted in covenant. It carries endurance, legacy, and eternal weight. What is being poured into your life now will not vanish. It will ripple forward, blessing others long after you. Imagine standing at the end of a long race. You remember every stumble, every stretch of pain, every moment you thought you would collapse. But when you cross the line and the crown is placed upon your head, the weight of glory outweighs the memory of pain. That is the exchange you are stepping into. Chosen one. You are crowned with provision, not because you demanded it, but because you obeyed, not because you forced it, but because you surrendered. This is the season where heaven proves publicly what you chose privately, that obedience is always worth it. So wear this crown with humility, carry it with honor, and let your life be the testimony that when God funds, He does not merely sustain, He crowns. And as you wear this crown, remember, it is not just for you. A crown shines so that others can see the light reflected in it. Your provision is meant to inspire faith, to steer hope, to remind others that obedience is never in vain. Let your crown become a mirror pointing upward, showing the world who your true King is. For every gift you receive, every resource entrusted to you, is a signal that God has not forgotten His chosen ones. You are walking proof that surrender leads to glory, and obedience leads to crowns that will never fade. Chosen one, you have journeyed through every word with an open heart. You have seen the pattern. Obedience that once felt costly has now proven to be the currency of heaven. Sacrifice that seemed hidden has become the seed of abundance. And the season you are walking into is no longer marked by lack, but by supply, by crown, by provision flowing like a river. This is not the end of your story. It is the threshold of a greater beginning. Each step forward will carry evidence that God funds what He ordains. Your life will shine with the testimony that obedience is never wasted and surrender is never forgotten. And now, as we close, let me speak from the heart. This flame we carry here is meant to shine further, brighter, and longer, and you can be part of that glow. When you like this message, it is as though you add another spark to the fire, keeping it alive in the night. When you share it, it is like releasing a lantern into the sky, a light that someone wandering far away may suddenly see and follow. When you subscribe, it is as if you choose to return to the fire again and again, taking your seat in the circle of warmth. When you comment, it is like carving your name on a tree by the riverside, saying, "I was here, and I received." Those words will stand as part of the testimony for others who come later. And if your heart is stirred to generosity, donating is like pouring oil into the lamp of this house, ensuring that its light never dims, that its reach never fades. This is not compulsion. It is invitation. It is the beauty of partnership, that together we guard the flame, together we lift the light. Together we prove that God funds His chosen ones. Chosen one. You are crowned, resourced, and ready. Now go, shine, and let your life declare the goodness of the one who never fails.